The panel is about from innovation to impact, keys to accelerate the low carbon energy transition. For that, they have put together an incredible panel. So I'm going to say all the names, and if you then can give them a very big applause, that would be amazing. Can we please welcome to this stage Chema from Kira Ventures, Iker from Zubi Matteco, Florencio from Cener, and last but not least, Bianca from Cleantech for Iberia. A very, very big applause, please.
Thank you.
Sí, para que la gente lo pueda reconocer fácil.
I think we are very well behaved. We sit each in
Exactly.
our spot. See, we make it
You're
really
very
easy
disciplined.
for you guys.
Fantastic. So hi everyone. It's a pleasure to moderate this panel on accelerating low carbon energy transition. My name is Bianca Dragomir. I'm director at Cleantech for Iberia, which is an initiative whose mission is to turn the Iberian Peninsula into Europe's next cleantech industrial leader. So basically, our mission is to speed up the green reindustrialization, to speed up the clean technologies where Spain and Portugal have a competitive advantage. And we work with a coalition at heart, a coalition of leading investors, innovators, universities, incubators, banks, family offices across Spain and Portugal. And this initiative is powered by Breakthrough Energy, which is Bill Gates Foundation for Clean Energy. And I'm really happy to say that Zubi or BBVA as Spanish partners have also joined this effort and are supporting us. So this coalition is growing more and more, and happy to see a diverse type of stakeholders joining in, because clean tech actually needs a diverse type of stakeholders joining in, because this is a systemic approach and we need to make it happen all together. And just to put a little bit of context before we actually dive into the debate, just wanted to say that, as you know, there is a tectonic shift in clean technologies or in energy-related technologies globally. There is a clean tech race that is in full swing at the global level, with US leveraging many billions into speeding up and scaling up clean technologies. China, as you all know, is today not only the global frontrunner in clean tech investments, but also has a growing lead on clean tech manufacturing over both EU and the US. And even if European Union gave the starting gun in this clean tech race already in 2000, setting up the European Green Deal and really ambitious decarbonization targets, at the moment we are falling behind when it comes to manufacturing clean technologies. Just a couple of indicators. As you know, we are losing competitiveness globally in this sector, and 4 out of 50 largest technology companies globally are from Europe. So that's really a low number. So we are at a scale and fail moment in Europe's clean tech innovation story, and Spain plays a crucial role here. Because Spain at the moment entails the opportunity to reindustrialize and to be a hub in this sense, building on clean and abundant energy that is 4 to 5 times cheaper than in Germany, for example, a reason for which many stakeholders are relocating here or are setting up shop. There's a strong industrial base, and a very interesting element, the investment in emerging clean technologies has increased 6 times over the last 5 years. So this is a good news. Apparently, Spain and Iberia in general is playing a key role here. So I have the pleasure to discuss within this context about how we can make Spain a leader here, and actually how we can, if we make Spain a leader in clean technologies and we accelerate low carbon energy technologies, Europe will thrive as well. And I'm going to discuss about this with panelists that represent the energy transition innovation value chain, I would say. We have the research, we have the market, we have the investors. So I think it's going to be a great conversation. So let's get started. And I would like to start maybe with you, Iker. I would like to ask you, what do you think are the most promising innovations in clean technologies that you believe will have the highest impact in accelerating the low carbon energy transition now?
Thanks, Bianca. Thanks for the invitation. So I think it's really hard, like these absolute questions, like what are the ones? Because I think the world is so rapidly changing that it's like you don't control where the world is heading. You can influence, and there's, we'll see how things evolve. But so I'm Iker, so I have kind of maybe two hats. One is Chema at Zubi, where essentially we create companies, we invest in companies, and then one of the companies that we actually created at Zubi Labs, which is our venture builder, I've taken a very active role, and I'm running for the last year as a CEO, which is Matteco. It's a Cleantech company focused on new materials for green hydrogen production and making affordable, which is, as we see, the key element within the decarbonization agenda. So I kind of like maybe throwing the ball back. So I kind of like, being, Cleantech for Iberia, also a coalition with Breakthrough Energy. I like how kind of Breakthrough Energy thinks about, first of all, that if the world as it flourishes, it means, GPD will increase, but it also will increase GPD energy consumption and climate emissions, hence. And then kind of puts, these 5 major themes on how we think about the world and like the carbon footprint. So I'm going to talk about kind of some innovations and examples of companies we created or invested in some of those themes. So the first one is like manufacturing, 30% footprint, which is like how we make things. And in that space, we're investing quite a bit of companies around the circular economy. So in terms of like whether it's making waste management facilities more efficient and productive, which is Umara, Recobo, for example, which are around like using surplus of inventories. Tech fees, which is kind of enabling pay-as-you-go models for creating a circular economy, which is a really interesting angle. And then, of course, Matteco, we think about from kind of the energy consumption that you need, high temperature for, with renewable fuels for. Second element is electricity, right? So it's the 27% weight, how we plug in. So we invested there in Via Power, which is a company that optimizes the charging of electric vehicles. So it's a SaaS platform that enables, optimizes that charging solutions. Clevergy, also Solaris, which is really interesting, using pay-as-you-go, but to enable green energy production. So those are like different business models that like taking new angles. And I think the world will move as a combination of multiple efforts. Then we think about transportation, so how we move, that has like a 16% weight. We invested there in Yup, which is a micromobility smart parking solution. Agriculture, 21%, so we created a company there in terms of alternative protein, which is called Aldeina. And then buildings, which is 7%, was actually a lot of our activity, because at Zubi we have, education business, we have impact real estate, an investment management platform and a venture builder, but we've created around our impact real estate projects, we create a lot of things there. So Nido, which is mainstreaming heat pumps and the rolling out of heat pumps, so using essentially renewable energy for heat and cold. Ecosia and Greenest, which is around making real estate more efficient with technology solutions. Udea, which is building buildings out of wood. And Co-Circular, which is using waste of buildings and kind of creating a circular economy. So these are like, different angles, like maybe blurbs on innovations. And as you see, I don't think there is a silver bullet. And you see, the portfolio of climate investors, and and we have some here in the audience, and it's kind of realizing that it will be a combination of efforts. It will be many different angles that are even, I would say, reinforcing positively. And I like to think about kind of these major transitions as a way to think about climate.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Iker. Really useful to see, what are exactly the hotspots of, emission production and how we can change there. And we'll come back to manufacturing electricity after a round. I would like to ask Florencio here. Florencio, you represent the National Renewable Energy Center. What do you think are the, let's say, 1, 2, 3, or one even, innovation that has the highest impact or it's likely to really make a dent?
Yeah, thank you, Bianca. From the technical point of view, focusing in renewable and in energy, I have to say we know how to generate energy. I don't know if you know it, but only in one day the Earth receives more energy than the amount of energy that we spend in 1 year, only in one day. So, and we have the technology to generate and to transform that energy into useful energy. And the solar energy, the wind energy, they are in a much major situation. But we need to storage it. So big challenge, how to store and how to transport that energy from the places when we generate it to the places that we consume it. So I would say no storage, no party, no storage, no transition. So energy, thermal, solar thermal energy storage, electric storage in batteries or whatever the forms, and also green hydrogen as an energy vector can play a very significant role as a way to storage and transport energy from one place to another. Then, obviously, the need of the digitalization, all the sectors of the economic sectors, to be able to use all this energy in the most efficient way. So to summarize, to make it very, very short, I would say energy storage, green hydrogen, and digitalization. That's my opinion.
Thank you very much, Florencio. I think storage is becoming particularly important this year in view of the COP29, where last year at the COP we had some commitments on renewables, on energy efficiency. Many say that this year it's the storage time to have some clear objective. Let's see if this happens. Chema from Kira Ventures. You're an investor, so your vision is also equally important here because we need to bring this to market. So investment is key here. What do you think about this?
It's a bit hard to talk after Iker and Florencio because they know a lot about these topics. But I really have the focus on as an investor at Kira, we now have the focus on the industries and projects that are really hard to be electrified. I mean, like heavy transport, like Iker said, or industrial heat. There are industries that are really hard to electrify, and there are appearing some startups that work on these fields. For example, in heavy in heat, industrial heat, it's curious because the solutions that we are looking as an investor are startups that are working with all technologies, like molten salts, like concentrated solar power, with some storage of thermal energy, that are now becoming competitive again. These technologies were pushed out of the market because of solar photovoltaic at the beginning of 2000, and now they are competitive again to change the boilers fitted with natural gas, and it's a form that the companies and the startups are obtaining the net zero thermal process. In the other side, in heavy transport, my vision here is very different because the heavy transport is really, including aviation, is being very disruptive now. I think it's going to be a chemical revolution more than an electrified revolution because the solutions that we are seeing and we are analyzing are more related with how we produce the same fuel but with net zero materials like carbon, bioorganic carbon or fuel or plastic to fuel solutions. So what I see is that we are not going to transform the engines of the flights or maybe the engines of the big trucks. We are more close to transform the fuel that go into these engines. And finally, there is one thing we should not forget, is that there are some process or some industries that will not ever be net zero standalone. For example, concrete production. Concrete production, you produce CO2 emissions. Or farming, we don't have cows that can produce milk with electricity. And these industries are going to be hit, or the carbon capture solution are going to play a really relevant role in these industries. But probably these startups are working in a very long term. After 10 years of discovery, this is the low mature stage of the innovation.
But you do see new innovations around like what cows are eating.
Yeah,
to produce methane. So there's a few breakthrough energy investments in that space. It's kind of interesting because sometimes we think about like cows. That's like
the
physical asset. Right?
Yeah.
How do you affect it?
Totally.
Right. But it's actually innovation can change from many different ways.
Yeah.
And like there are innovations like even monitoring where cows are to like optimize their performance.
Yeah.
Essentially,
So. Right. Yeah. So Cleantech from a different angle, right?
Yeah,
and also
everywhere.
equally important, right, to minimize those emissions. But let's talk a little bit about scalability of these solutions, right? We talked about, well, what do you think, the key technologies, but how do we really scale these technologies to actually really, make an impact? And on one hand, I'm thinking Europe is producing 30% of the scientific papers globally, but only 7% of the actual innovations that arrive to market globally. So there's a big gap there. And I'd like to start here with Florencio, maybe. How do we really take research to market faster? What do you think? There's no silver bullet, I know, already Iker said, but what's your take? What do we need?
Yeah, I think it is not a question of more investment. Maybe it's a question of how to where to put the money in. I mean, I'm always looking for partnerships in which the academia, research center, or a university is working together with the industry, and also with a strong component of social science and humanities. I think that the point is that to be very focused in that all the innovation of the technology development to make sure that the industry is interested in it, because if not, we are running the risk of that a researcher in a university are spending 10 years and investigate something that nobody matter. I would say, to create this strategic partnership in the research to make sure that the innovation are aligned with the interest and the challenge on the industry, are aligned with the objectives, strategic objectives overall, have a social social component as a part of the development, because, for example, if we have seen some technological developments in the previous session. The technologies or even a smartphone are something that help a citizen to increase the efficiency of the house. If the people who has to handle with it are not, it's not friendly for them, it doesn't, it's lost money. So we have to have also the citizens involved even in the innovation phase.
So involving the citizens in this process, industry, activating industry, right? Yeah. Iker, what do you think? You are accelerating green hydrogen technology, disruptive technology as we speak. Yeah. What do we need to scale?
Yeah, well, my smart guys are doing as I speak. I basically, give talks and prepare PowerPoint, so probably. But, it's interesting because, this is like when we think about startups. You're supposed, I don't know how many of you, like entrepreneurs, are supposed to be like the guys that come up with the ideas, the guys that become fantastic entrepreneurs that raise funding, the guys that actually become fantastic CEOs to run these huge companies. And the truth is that that's not how we should think about it, right? It should be more like a relay ride. When you watch the Olympics, you're seeing a bunch of athletes hand the batons, and they actually achieve a much better mark than if you had one guy running the whole race. which be, by the way, exhausted, which is what happens, to entrepreneurs every day, and, at the end of the night, and we wake up kind of fired up again with our, pursuing our dreams. So if we think about, some of these innovations that are coming from research centers, is similarly. I don't think we can expect scientists to be these amazing guys on the labs, and by the way, become these fantastic entrepreneurs, and now become their, fantastic CEOs. And you see very little examples of those that actually have done that, right? And so I think more of like those buttons, those interfaces, those handoffs, right? And how do you actually create platforms for enable that? So with Matteco, and this is a really science-based, it's built on 10 years of R&D work from the University of Valencia. We're a spin-off of the University of Valencia. You see the work that these guys have done, our scientists have done all these years. And then we kind of find the company at a tipping point when, with no team, with an amazing thing that it was working more on the lab than on, on the market. So we kind of came in from Zubi Labs as a venture builder, and we started creating a team and creating kind of the infrastructure for the company to succeed. And then kind of now into more the industrial scaling up phase. But also realizing that although we started with, we think about like nanotechnology and new material innovation for like green hydrogen production, and essentially for like making a better future, using, and kind of innovations associated with climate change, realize that really green hydrogen might be just one use case, that we can actually become a great partner and platform for in-licensing and bringing, kind of research on very low TRLs and kind of moving them along in our platform where we have capacity not only to co-develop, to industrialize and go to market. So, and I think that's, if you see, having lived in the US for a bit, like the aspect of like consolidation and synergies is much more present than in Europe, which seems you have to run, right, these, the whole race by yourself in terms of like integrating, building up, and putting the different pieces of the puzzle so the puzzle actually works, right? And that's at least the mindset we have. It's like, how do you take elements that actually are very synergic, and you can take research and essentially let people do what they enjoy. And if you think about innovation, it's really about talent. And talent is about letting people thrive in what they love and what they do, right? And that's kind of at least our mindset. It's like, how do we create a global leader in new material innovation by leveraging talent, by leveraging capabilities, and kind of understanding that there's some things we're gonna develop, some things we're gonna industrialize, and some things we will take the go-to-market. And of course, I always like to say that everything starts small, and everything small can be big. So I like to start with a very big focus, and that's why we're kind of focusing on green hydrogen, selling that around the world, on actually some specific technologies within green hydrogen, and make that affordable and hopefully kind of contribute to climate change, fighting climate change.
And certainly green hydrogen is, according to Draghi's recent report, one of the still hotspots, one of the areas where Europe can still have the competitive edge in front of China, China or the US. So still we can
tipping point. We're kind of that tipping point of like, are you gonna be like, are you gonna succeed, or are you gonna be like run by the sides by China?
Yeah, well,
but even I think Bill Gates mentions hydrogen is probably the closest to a silver bullet that we can have.
Exactly.
Without being a silver bullet, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, because of its versatility, because he also calls it a Swiss knife, actually, of the energy transition, because you can make everything you want almost from hydrogen. Anyway,
connects with renewable fuels, with SAF, with boats, shipping industry, all that stuff. So
exactly. So talking about hydrogen and other technologies, Chema, I would like to ask you, what are the gaps to scale these technologies from your point of view?
Complementary the Florencio said and Iker, from an investor point of view, I think we don't have the adequate pocket of money to finance these projects. Because when you think in scaling, in fast growth, you always think in venture capital firms. But venture capital firms has a requirement of investment period very short and huge returns. And the energy industry is a systemic global industry. It moves very slow because it's critical for the economy of the country, it's critical for the people's life. So the amount of projects that can satisfy the VC requirements are lower than in other industries. And if you look for other kind of funds with longer periods of investment times and lower returns objectives, what you're going to find is private equity or infrastructure funds that they need predictable income or EBITDA positive or at least positive cash flows, and also startups are very far from that. So you have on one side asset-light investors and the other side no-risk investors, and the middle is a gap that you need to cover, not only with public funds that are now financing these projects or some corporates that are financing these projects. You need private money designed at the beginning of the fund with the investment periods and the return expected aligned with the startups can achieve, because if not, there is going to be these unconnected worlds, and we are not going to can scale the laboratory or the R&D projects to infra or venture companies.
So obviously capital is absolutely crucial to scale. I'm just recalling, I have very fresh in my mind that last week I was in Brussels at the Cleantech for Europe summit. So all the policymakers, leading innovators, investors, from the cleantech space in Europe were coming. And actually one of the big conclusions was we need a more diverse, more sophisticated investment or financial infrastructure or architecture, if you want, in order to make cleantech happen. So, the capital stack is really, really important, from grants to blended finance. Iker, what do you think? How should we reshape financial architecture in order to make cleantech happen at speed?
And I think I was going to check. I think the world is fired up on see what Kira. I don't know what we can disclose publicly, but in terms of how you take you're not scared about hardware, right?
We're not scared.
Which is venture capital, and you guys coming from the infra side. I think venture capital historically, at least the most of the folks that work with in the past, kind of asset-light business models. And at Zubi we do have asset-light business models, but you think about creating catalyze and electrodes for green hydrogen. It's you need a factory. It's and it's interesting because when you think about creating some of these companies, is revenues for a software company, the pitches we're seeing previously is okay, you develop software, you start selling, you invest, great. A deep tech company is like this. It's flat, zero, and then skyrockets. Unless you have production capacity, you can't manufacture anything. By the way, the clients don't want to buy from you and take it seriously unless you're not a lab stage startup, but actually an industrial company. Why would they ever risk hundreds of millions? And we have these discussions with folks in the hydrogen value chain. Why rely on this startup for your business? So there is a broken model there, because you start with grants, great, it's there. But the issue is that grants are not predictable. It's slow. It's you can't build an innovation ecosystem around grants. Then when you start wanting to advance TRLs and buy equipment, get samples, you actually need to manufacture. So where are you getting that money? Don't look at asset-light VCs. Maybe the hardware VCs. They might look at you, but they say, I would want some customer proof points, give me some frame contracts. And that's the gray zones, which are tricky. You look at banks and they say, show me your revenue. Where's the revenue? It's oh, no revenue. It's great, next one. So the role of public de-risking, I don't even talk about grants, just the fact of de-risking of loans is critical. It basically, guarantee programs, things that is you're not bankable, but you're not even attractive to VCs that are going to look for client proof points, and you can build this model on grants. How we solve this in Matteco is essentially equity, right? But that kind of limits the scope of companies that can really drive these on just equity, which of course kind of requires maybe a team with a certain track record, etc. So I think that's the critical point if we think about. Then I think as things scale up, the world is much broader, and you could potentially think about, do I want international investors and how that's going to influence the control of this company? Right? That's kind of a European agenda. But from the entrepreneur perspective, I think the critical step is how you cover that that valley of like, I need to buy equipment, I need to put my lab together. You know, labs are unpredictable. Sometimes I don't. No investor really wants to take me seriously because I don't have customers. No bank is going to even look at me. So that's the critical role for public and the risk in financing.
Yeah, and actually one of the conclusions also last week at the summit was exactly this, that in the next commission mandates, the funding will be called actually de-risking, you know? Well, we will move away from grants, and also the innovators are asking it, so I hope that this will happen actually. Let's talk a bit before we finish. We have still some minutes, but I would like to talk about the elephant in the room here, which is the government, obviously. And actually, you know, we've alluded to the government, you know, when we talk about investment and the funding schemes. But, you know, what I wanted to ask you, what do you think, you know, how can we have governments and maybe industry together helping these innovations reach the market? You know, how can policy actually help in this space? Because I think that there's a link, you know, Florencio, you mentioned about industry demand, you know, Iker, de-risking. We know Cleantech is a CapEx intensive, you know, space with high risk. So how do we actually activate government or how government can have a meaningful role here? Also activating industry and the corporates. Maybe, I don't know, maybe Florencio would like to take this one?
Yeah, from my perspective, my point of view, what governments have to do is to set up clearly the goals, the strategy, and to develop a legal framework on the one hand, which is clear, long term, in the way that the industry, the technology centers, the academia, we know which are the guidelines, which are where we are, and to set this legal framework in a steady situation. It was in the way that it is clear for everyone, which is the situation, and there is not uncertainties regarding, you remember what happened with the subsidies with the photovoltaics years ago. So all these situations, when there is a not clear strategy, long-term strategy, and there is not a legal framework, it's at the end what you are doing is increasing the risk. And it's, in my opinion, from a research center, the only that I would ask the government is to set the legal framework clearly in a long term. Yeah.
Might I build? Because I'm just going to maybe be slightly less politically correct. So I think there are two things that, like, from a policy perspective, you can achieve, right? And those have very different instruments. So the one is if we want to decarbonize, say, Spain and Europe, then essentially what you're worried is about, take a certain use case, you take, industry or mobility use case, you try to find technology, you source it, maybe there is some sort of incentive. And then essentially you're buying technology, you're decarbonizing. Climate change is a global thing. It's not like by regions. What changes is the control certain regions have over their policy in their countries, whatever. But climate change it's connected, right? So it's thinking that is like climate change will be solved by just solving climate change in Europe. It doesn't make sense. One thing is decarbonizing your region or your country. The other is actually developing a clean tech ecosystem, industry, value chain, and reindustrializing a country. It's two very different things. Mm-hmm. So then it's about the incentives in your value chain. It's about, we're talking about de-risking. It's about not focusing on the project and on the demand side, but also focusing on the elements and the building blocks. And these companies will, of course, contribute to your decarbonization agenda in your country or your region, but it will also export, will create economy, and will contribute to the decarbonization objectives of many other places. So if you take Matteco, like 95% of revenue is outside Spain, right? We do have received, say, for example, Aperte, we received around $1 million from Aperte. So it's an incentive to create value chain, but how we will, and our numbers, like we drop like 20% the cost of hydrogen production, right? We're contributing to all these different technology providers and projects around the world. Our ambition is not to contribute to climate change in Spain, it's to solve climate change globally. And that's enabled by policy that creates the building blocks and the value chain in your country that enables you to export. And I think we have to be like very bold around that, because it's not just subsidizing projects, and it's great to accelerate permitting of projects, but that solves part of the equation. It doesn't create an industry. And I think Draghi in his report was very bold about this, like how do you create an innovation industry and a clean tech industry that actually ensures the quality of life and prosperity of Europe.
Indeed. So I think time to wrap up. I think we have a few great ideas here from this panel. I would like to thank all of you for sharing. Just on my side, I think that the flavor that you leave us with is we need basically 4 elements that need to be orchestrated. Technology, capital, policy, and partnerships. And just coming to the ecosystem part, reindustrialization indeed is about creating value chains and creating ecosystems. And emissions have no passport indeed, but if we reindustrialize, we gain competitiveness. So that's where we need to work. And with fantastic work of Matteco, I'm sure there's lots of examples that Kira could also have brought and could bring related to the next generation of industries that you're investing in, and also the Center for Renewable Energies. We look forward to your work in the next stage. And just final flavor is that we need a bold leadership, maybe a fearless leadership like Matteco has in the green hydrogen. I would say a polycentric leadership in order to make this transition happen, because this is a collective effort. So I think we are all in this. So thank you very much for this panel, and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was a very, very interesting panel.
Thank you.
So you set the bar high for the rest of them.